Opening, the slow breath before time. Across centuries, the world breathes in silence. A village buried beneath snow, a hearth glowing in the northern dark, a castle dissolving in summer smoke, and a sunlit city fading into dust, each separated by oceans and ages, yet joined by a single rhythm, the quiet endurance of life. Beneath history's noise, beneath the weight of conquest and ruin, something remains, the slow, steady breath of the world. Time moves like water through stone. It wears down mountains, fills valleys, softens walls. It does not rush. It waits. Every life, every age passes through its current. The villagers of Salem who whispered fear into the cold night, the northern families who learned strength by the glow of their hearths, the warriors of Osaka who watched their castle burn, and the dreamers of Babylon who built towers toward the sun, all belong to the same long story. They rise, endure, and fade, yet their traces remain, pressed gently into the dust of the earth and the memory of air. In every age, the same gestures repeat. Hands gather wood, shape stone, write names, close eyes. The same sounds return. Footsteps over frozen ground, the creak of wood in the wind, the hum of work in a distant field. History is not a series of moments that vanish. It is a circle that expands quietly, folding one generation into the next. Beneath the snow, beneath the ash, beneath the blue tiles of fallen gates, life continues to breathe, soft but unbroken. A village lies still under a grey winter sky. Its houses lean close, their chimneys breathing smoke into the wind. Within them, people speak in low voices, fearing what cannot be seen. Time moves through the narrow streets, listening, gathering what it will keep. 1,000 miles away and 1,000 years earlier, a family in a timber house sits before a northern fire. Their voices rise and fall with the crack of flame. They speak not of war or gods, but of patience, of the strength found in quiet hands, in the work that must be done each day. The snow outside deepens, the world narrows to warmth and breath, and still the rhythm holds. Far to the east, the smoke of Osaka drifts over fields where two armies once stood. The flames that consumed the castle have long since died, yet the silence that followed remains. Peace, shaped by exhaustion, settles over the land like mist. The sword is sealed, the armor folded, and the memory of battle becomes discipline, a lesson learned not in victory, but in restraint. For centuries, the land stays still, unbroken, breathing beneath its calm surface like an ember beneath ash. And beyond them all, in the heart of an older world, the walls of Babylon shimmer beneath the endless sun. The conqueror who entered through its gates dreamt of a single world, his voice echoing among the hanging gardens. But even his empire dissolved into dust, leaving behind only the reflection of its beauty, glazed bricks, blue as the sky, and the slow whisper of the river that still moves toward the sea. The names of kings fade, but the sound of water endures. Across these distant moments runs a single thread, the rhythm of endurance. It is the sound beneath every age, the quiet labor that keeps life moving when all else falls silent. It hums in the hands of those who build, who wait, who remember. Empires collapse, faiths fracture, but the rhythm never stops. It passes from firelight to candlelight, from voice to echo, from breath to breath. History is not loud. It does not vanish when the page ends or when the fire dies. It settles like dust in sunlight on every surface of the world. It waits beneath the noise of the present, beneath engines, bells, and human ambition. And if one stands still long enough, if one listens beyond the motion of hours, one can hear it, the slow, steady pulse that binds snow to river, flame to stone, and silence to memory. It is the breath that has always been here, patient and eternal, drawing in the past, releasing the future. The gentle, endless breathing of history itself. The Quiet Village, Salem, 1692. Winter settles slowly over New England, and the world seems to tighten beneath its cold breath. The light fades early, the sky a dull sheet of iron that presses down upon the earth. Houses of grey wood stand close together, their roofs bending under the slow, relentless weight of snow. Smoke rises from narrow chimneys and drifts into the pale air, its scent carrying through the empty streets, a blend of pine, ash, and the faint sweetness of burning applewood. Beneath the stillness, life continues in its narrow rhythm, each day marked by endurance more than joy. The people of Salem live close to one another, but each house feels solitary, its windows shuttered against the wind, its doors sealed with the care of fear. The lanes between them are packed with ice, and the fields beyond are buried in white silence. The only movement comes from the smoke that turns and twists in the air, the faint tread of boots on snow, the sound of water freezing in buckets left outside overnight. In these long months, time does not pass but lingers, and within that lingering, thought begins to turn inward. The people are devout, bound by the word of God and the eyes of their neighbors. Each gesture, each word, carries the weight of judgment. The minister's voice echoes through the meeting house on Sundays, sharp and slow, his words carving through the cold air like tools against stone. Children sit motionless, their hands clasped, their breath rising like ghosts. Women lower their eyes and whisper prayers for purity. Men listen, grim-faced, as if faith were a battle to be fought in silence. Outside, the wind moves through the trees with a sound that feels like whispering. And in that whisper, imagination begins to take root. When the dark comes, it comes completely. Candles flicker in small windows, throwing faint shapes across the walls. The air inside the houses grows thick with smoke and breath. There is no music, no laughter, only the steady rhythm of work, spinning, mending, praying. Even the smallest comforts, a loaf of bread rising near the fire, the warmth of wool drying by the hearth, are guarded as blessings easily lost. And yet, in one small house, something begins to change. Two young girls, the niece and daughter of the minister, begin to shake without reason. Their eyes roll back, their bodies twist, and from their lips come cries that no one understands. The mother rushes to them, her hands trembling, calling their names, but they do not answer. The neighbors are summoned, their faces pale with cold and curiosity. They crowd into the narrow room, the air thick with fear and candle smoke. The girls tremble as if caught between sleep and waking, their voices breaking into strange fits of laughter and sobbing. Someone mentions illness, another whispers possession. There are no doctors in Salem who can explain such things, only the talk of souls and sin. The minister prays over them, his voice low and urgent, but still the trembling continues. Outside, snow falls against the windows, soft and soundless, as if sealing the village inside its own breath. The story spreads with the speed of winter wind. In the tavern, men speak of devils. In the marketplace, women cross themselves when they pass the minister's house. The world, already narrow, begins to close further. Every strange sound is a warning, every shadow a sign. Children wake crying in the night. Animals behave oddly. A cow kicks its stall. A dog howls without reason. Nothing is small anymore. Every act becomes evidence of something unseen. Within the hush of that frozen season, fear becomes a language everyone understands. It passes from mouth to mouth, from prayer to rumor, until it no longer needs a voice to exist. Even those who do not believe begin to listen for footsteps in the snow, for whispers behind the door. They search one another's faces for guilt, for difference, for anything that might explain what cannot be named. The minister speaks again, louder now, of Satan's snares and the danger of pride. He warns that sin hides in plain sight, that even the righteous can be tempted, that the enemy walks not in foreign lands but here, among their own. Each sermon deepens the silence, for no one dares to breathe too freely. The cold itself seems to listen. In the days that follow, the girls recover for a time, then fall again into fits. When asked who torments them, their words are confused, but names begin to emerge: neighbors, widows, servants. The listeners exchange glances. Doubt turns to certainty, and certainty to accusation. The first whispers of witchcraft move through the village like a shiver, invisible yet unstoppable. Those accused protest their innocence, but their words fall like snowflakes, soft and quickly buried. The meeting house fills with tension, the air heavy with prayer and suspicion. Outside, the fields lie untouched, their fences half hidden by drifts. The world looks peaceful, but beneath that peace, something dark begins to grow, not in the forest or the night, but in the hearts of those who fear. They light candles not for warmth, but for proof that they are still good. The children watch the flames flicker and think of the girls who shake and cry, and in their dreams they see faces watching from the shadows. The village no longer sleeps easily. Doors are bolted, voices drop to whispers, snow falls again and again, covering every path, every sign of movement, as if the earth itself wishes to forget. But memory is restless. The scent of smoke, the echo of a scream, the murmur of a prayer, these linger long after sound has faded, and when spring finally comes, the thaw will reveal not renewal, but reckoning, for beneath the frozen ground of Salem lies something that cannot melt, the quiet terror of a community that has learned to fear its own reflection, and the fragile truth that in the coldest season, belief can burn hotter than any fire. Soon the quiet becomes filled with names, whispers, and glances that do not meet, and Salem, once bound by silence, begins to speak in voices that no longer sound human. Fear moves like frost through every room, thin, invisible, and sharp. It slips under doors, clings to walls, and settles in the lungs of those who breathe it. People begin to speak in half sentences, stopping before they finish, unsure of who might be listening. Eyes turn away in the street. Hands that once offered bread now tremble before knocking. The first to be taken are those who have always stood at the edges. A servant without family, a wanderer who prays in strange words, an old woman who talks to herself when she walks the fields. They are called before the magistrates, questioned beneath the dim light of candles that throw their shadows long against the wooden walls. The air in the hall is heavy with sweat and smoke. Every breath feels like judgment. The accused are told that confession will bring mercy, that silence is a sign of guilt, that the truth is already known and must only be spoken aloud. Some deny until their voices break, others nod, weary and frightened, repeating words that do not feel their own. Each confession feeds the next. Each name spoken pulls another from the quiet. And still the crowd gathers, filling the narrow space with the rhythm of accusation and denial, the scrape of chairs, the dull thud of footsteps leaving the room. The faces change, but the ritual remains. The judge's quill scratches across the page, the witnesses murmur, and outside the wind shifts through the trees, carrying fragments of the day's fear into the night. The gallows rise on the hill above the town, a wooden shape against the pale sky, its ropes coiled like sleeping snakes. No one looks directly at it, yet everyone knows it is there. The path leading to it becomes worn and familiar, the sound of wheels grinding over dirt, a new kind of prayer. Horses pass, their breath steaming in the morning air, and with each creak of the cart, the village holds its breath. Those left behind close their doors tighter. They light candles and whisper that God will see the truth, though their voices waver as they speak. In the marketplace, where once there was talk of crops and trade, there is now only the naming of sins. Even the children repeat what they have heard, their small voices echoing the patterns of the adults. The minister prays louder, his sermon stretching long into the afternoon. He speaks of devils in disguise, of temptation hiding in the shape of kindness, of how the pure must burn away the rot among them. His words fall like snow, relentless, cold, and impossible to stop. Through that summer, the fields turn green again, untouched by the chaos in the village. Wheat sways in the wind, and the river moves with its slow, patient rhythm, indifferent to the weight of human fear. But the people no longer look to the fields. They stay inside, curtains drawn, waiting for the next name to rise like smoke. They measure time not by sunrise or harvest, but by the sound of the bell calling them to witness another confession. The air inside the meeting house is thick, the benches worn smooth by restless hands. Some pray for forgiveness, others for survival. The line between the two grows thin. When the accused are brought forward, their faces are pale, their steps uneven. They do not plead, they only breathe, slow and visible, as if even the act of drawing air is dangerous. Their words are drowned by murmurs, by the scrape of boots, by the heavy silence that falls before the verdict. The rope waits outside. The hill grows familiar, yet no one speaks its name. It stands beyond the last row of houses where the ground dips and the air feels thinner. Birds no longer rest there. Grass bends beneath the weight of what has been done. And when the carts pass on their way to it, carrying those whose names have been spoken too often, the villagers turn their eyes toward the ground. They tell themselves it is justice, that cleansing must come before peace, but inside a colder truth begins to whisper that the fire they feared has already begun to burn within them. The summer sun blazes overhead, indifferent and bright, lighting the fields that no one tends. The crops grow wild, unharvested, while the people shrink from the daylight as if it exposes too much. Windows are shuttered even at noon. The sound of hammers and saws fades. The rhythm of life breaks apart. Only the voices of the accusers remain constant, ringing out with conviction so fierce it silences doubt. At night, the town sleeps fitfully, dreams filled with faces that accuse and faces that vanish. Some wake, believing they have seen the devil's mark. Others wake unsure if they themselves are guilty. Fear has become faith, and faith has become a weapon too sharp to hold. When the wind changes, carrying the smell of grass and smoke together, people whisper that the air feels different, thinner, restless, waiting. But the trials continue. More names, more questions, more confessions written in trembling ink. Each act meant to restore order only deepens the fracture. The gallows creak under their burden, the earth below grows hard and dry. And when the last of the carts rolls down from the hill, its wheels leaving deep tracks in the dust, no one follows. The village stands still again, silent, except for the sound of wind through the empty fields. The people close their doors and wait for a peace that does not come. The summer passes into autumn, and the green fades to brown. Frost returns to the windows. The same houses remain, the same chimneys smoke, But something in the air has changed. A quiet that is not safety, a calm that is not forgiveness. In the end, Salem becomes its own echo, a place where belief and fear have melted together, leaving only the hollow sound of footsteps on frozen ground and the memory of voices that once spoke too loudly in the name of purity. Top of form. By the time autumn returns, the voices have faded, leaving only the echo of what was once a fevered chorus. The air is sharp again, the fields stripped of green, and the leaves gather like rust around the edges of the village. The doors of the jail open one by one, hinges groaning in the chill, and those who remain step out into the pale, thin light of morning. Their faces are drawn, their eyes hollow from months of darkness, and though the wind touches them with a kind of gentleness, they do not smile. The sky above is a hard, empty grey. The world looks unchanged. The same houses, the same roads, the same church steeple pointing toward a heaven that had once seemed so certain. But beneath the familiar shapes, everything feels altered, as if the air itself has learned to hesitate. Neighbours pass without words. Hands that once clasped in prayer now remain still. The fields wait to be tilled, but no one hurries to the task. The rhythm of work has returned, yet it carries a new slowness, a kind of exhaustion that does not come from labour, but from knowing. Salem falls quiet once more. The sound of the bell no longer calls people to gather. It tolls softly, almost uncertainly, as though it fears to summon ghosts. The gallows on the hill have been dismantled, the wood carried away, but the earth remembers where the posts once stood. Even the grass that grows there bends differently, touched by a silence that feels older than the season. Children who once played near the edge of the fields avoid that place now, their parents' eyes warning them without words. In the evenings, smoke rises again from the chimneys, thin lines against the fading light, and within the houses the same routines resume. Bread baked, wool spun, prayers whispered. But under each roof, a silence remains, not of peace but of memory. It lingers in the corners, in the pauses between sentences, in the moments when the fire burns low and no one dares to speak. The villagers tell themselves that time will mend what was broken, that the snow will come and cover everything as it always has. And yet, when the first flakes begin to fall, the sight of them brings no comfort. Each flake drifts down softly, slowly, like the memory of names once spoken in fear. The streets fill with white, and the world seems pure again, but beneath that brightness, something sleeps uneasily. In the meeting house, the benches remain worn smooth by years of use, but the air feels heavier than before. The minister speaks in a quieter voice now, his words careful, his gaze often lowered. He prays for forgiveness, though he no longer says for what. The congregation listens, but their eyes wander. Some look toward the windows, watching the snow gather against the glass. Others stare at the floor, their thoughts far away. When the service ends, they file out in silence, their boots leaving faint tracks that the wind soon fills. The sound of life resumes, the chop of wood, the creak of wagon wheels, the distant cry of a crow. Yet every sound feels fragile, as if it might break. The people of Salem go on living, but they do so as though walking through a room where someone has just spoken the truth too loudly. They speak softly, they move carefully, and when they pass one another on the narrow path, their greetings are short and without warmth. Still they endure. They plant again in spring, they harvest again in summer, they pray again in winter. The world continues, slow and ordinary, as if the long pause had never happened. But sometimes, on the coldest nights, when the wind presses against the shutters and the fire burns low, someone will wake and think they hear a voice, faint, pleading, familiar. They turn in their bed, telling themselves it is only the sound of the trees, only the creak of the house settling. Yet in their hearts they know the voice belongs to memory itself, returning like the season, unburied and unchanged. The past never left, it merely waited beneath the snow. And as the years unfold, children will grow who do not remember the trials, who do not know the faces or the names, but the silence will teach them what the stories cannot. It will shape their gestures, their words, the way they look over their shoulders when the night feels too still. Salem becomes again a village of endurance, of work and faith and long winters. But under every roof, behind every prayer, there lies a quiet knowledge that what began with whispers ended with the sound of ropes, and that even now, beneath the calm surface of the snow, the earth holds the imprint of fear. When spring returns and the first thaw runs through the fields, it carries with it the faint taste of iron, as if the ground itself remembers that people will not speak of it. They will mend fences, rebuild barns, baptize their children, and say that all is well. Yet the air between them will never feel the same. It will always carry the stillness of that year, the echo of a silence earned too dearly, and the fragile understanding that peace is not the absence of pain, but the shadow that follows it. Beside the fire of the north, the Viking age. Far to the north, where daylight lingers and winter lasts longer than memory, small houses of timber rise from the frozen earth, their walls darkened by years of smoke and wind. The air smells of salt carried from the sea and pine from the forests beyond. The horizon stretches wide and pale, where the snow meets the grey line of water, and the wind moves through it all with a low, patient voice. Inside, a single fire burns at the centre of the home, its light steady and alive, painting the faces gathered around it in hues of amber and shadow. The walls glow faintly, lined with simple tools and worn garments, each carrying the mark of hands that have used them for generations. The world outside is vast and cold, but here, within the circle of warmth, life continues with a quiet rhythm older than any kingdom. Here, learning does not come from pages or ink, but from watching. From the turn of a hand, the flick of a wrist, the careful binding of rope or thread. Around the hearth, stories take the place of books, their rhythm blending with the crack of firewood and the sigh of wind against the roof. The mother's voice rises and falls like the tide. She speaks of distant journeys across dark waters, of ships that vanished and returned, of islands hidden in mist where the stars seem close enough to touch. The children listen without moving, their eyes reflecting the flame. Each story holds a lesson, though she never calls it one. They learn that courage is not loud, that strength is not in the arm, but in the patience of waiting through storms. She speaks of their ancestors, men and women who faced the endless cold and built homes where none had been, who fished the restless sea and found steadiness in its change. Her words move like the wind through their hair, soft and certain. They learn to hear the world before they learn to name it. The eldest child carves wood beside the fire, his knife moving slowly along the grain, shaping what will become the handle of a tool. His hands are steady, his eyes thoughtful. Each cut must follow the wood's own pattern, for to force it is to break it. His mother watches but does not correct. The lesson is not in the words but in the rhythm of doing. Beside him, his sister mends a tear in a woolen tunic, her fingers small but sure. She threads the needle with care, pulling it through the fabric in even strokes. Her grandmother once taught her that mending is a kind of remembering, that each stitch binds not only cloth, but time itself, holding together the life that wears it. Outside, the snow shifts against the door, and the wind carries the scent of the sea. The tide is turning, though none can see it in the darkness. Somewhere beyond the hill, a boat creaks in its mooring, the ropes stiff with frost. The father will rise before dawn to tend it, to break the thin crust of ice that forms each night along the shore. He will not speak as he works. His silence is not distance, but focus, and the children understand this as part of the rhythm of living. In this northern world, words are used carefully as tools themselves. They are meant to fit the task, not overflow it. Around the fire, the mother's stories weave through the stillness like threads of light. She tells of the sea that never ends, where the sun hovers low and gold upon the edge of the world. She tells of whales that rise from the depths, their backs glistening with salt and sunlight, their breaths like small storms upon the air. She speaks of courage and patience, of the strength it takes to leave shore, and the greater strength it takes to return. The children listen, their minds painting the images she describes, the long boats gliding across glassy water, the oars dipping in rhythm, the faces of sailors outlined by moonlight. From these stories, they learn what cannot be written, that endurance is more lasting than anger, that pride is fragile where patience is firm, and that every task, no matter how small, carries its own quiet dignity. The fire pops and sighs, sending a soft shower of sparks upward. Shadows ripple across the walls, across the carved beams of the ceiling, across the faces that glow with warmth. The youngest child drifts towards sleep, his head resting on his mother's arm, his breath slow and even. The mother's voice softens, her words slower now, as if even language must rest. She speaks of tomorrow, of the nets that must be mended, the traps that must be set before the sea grows rough, the way the light will fall across the snow when the dawn returns. In this place, every day is both work and worship. To mend the net is to give thanks, to cut wood is to show faith in the next fire. The mother's eyes catch the flame, and for a moment her face looks timeless, a mirror of all the women who have sat. Where she sits, keeping warmth alive while the world freezes outside. The children do not yet know the full weight of her stories, but they will. When they are older, and the wind carries them far from this house, they will remember not only the tales themselves, but the sound of her voice, the glow of the fire, the stillness of snow pressing against the walls. They will know that strength does not shout, it endures, and when they work, when they carve wood, mend cloth, or tend the boat against the pull of the tide, they will move with the same calm order that once surrounded this fire. Outside, the night deepens, and the stars begin to shimmer above the frozen sea, pale and bright, like scattered embers carried upward from the hearth. The house creaks softly, the wind hums, and the last story fades into silence. Within that silence, learning continues, not through the noise of command, but through the patient breathing of those who live close to the elements, who find wisdom not in books, but in the slow rhythm of their hands, the warmth of the flame, and the quiet bond of a family held together by the shared understanding that the world, though cold and vast, is gentle to those who move with care. Outside, the wind moves through the trees with a low hum, brushing past branches heavy with frost and whispering over roofs that glisten faintly beneath the pale northern moon. The air carries the scent of wood smoke and pine, and somewhere in the distance, the faint creak of a frozen river can be heard, a slow, patient shifting of ice beneath the stars. The animals sleep in their sheds, their breath rising in soft clouds that hang in the still air before fading. The village itself seems to breathe, its small cluster of timber houses gathered close like a family, their fires flickering behind thin panes of horn or oiled linen. In this world, time is not measured by the turning of hours, but by the deep rhythm of warmth and cold, of light and shadow. Days stretch long in summer, the sun lingering as if unwilling to leave, and nights in winter fold upon themselves, endless and quiet, as though the sky itself has gone to sleep. Life follows these cycles without resistance, shaped by them as the tide shapes the shore. When the children grow older, they step beyond the door and the soft circle of firelight into the wide breadth of the world. They walk to the gathering place of their people, the thing, a circle of stones worn smooth by centuries of voices. Here, men and women speak not for noise but for order. Their words rise and fall like the wind, calm and deliberate, each sentence balanced like a blade. No one shouts, for in this place silence is not weakness but respect. Every word must carry its full weight. Every promise, once spoken, stands as firm as stone. Disputes over land, trade, or honor are settled not with rage, but with patience, for they know that anger breaks faster than ice in spring. The children watch from the edge, their breath visible in the cold air, their eyes tracing the movements of those who stand to speak. They learn that authority here is not taken but earned, that wisdom lies in restraint, that the truest strength is not the force of the arm, but the steadiness of the voice. Around them, the elders listen with faces carved by time and weather, and when they nod, it is like the shifting of mountains, slow, final, and certain. Beyond the circle, the sea lies waiting, its dark expanse stretching toward the edge of sight. Each winter, when the nights grow longest and the winds sharpen, someone leaves upon a ship. The boats, narrow and strong, rest upon the shore like sleeping beasts. Their hulls are rubbed with oil, their ropes coiled neatly, their sails mended by careful hands. Departure is a quiet thing. There are no farewells shouted, no tears shown. The sea takes what it will, and the people have long since learned not to bargain with it. They stand together until the ship fades into mist, then return to their homes without looking back. For every voyage, someone waits, a wife, a brother, a child, and waiting becomes its own kind of endurance. The sea gives and takes with the same calm rhythm, carrying both fortune and loss. Yet the fire at home remains steady, its glow unchanged by what the tide decides. In the evenings, when the cold deepens and the stars sharpen in the sky, the old stories return. Around the hearth, the same names are spoken again, the same faces remembered, heroes, wanderers, those who built, and those who were lost. Their deeds are not told for glory, but for guidance, reminders of how to live when the world grows harsh. The stories are slow, measured like songs without melody, and the children listen, their eyes reflecting the flame. They learn that the past is not gone, but alive in every breath they take, that the courage of those who came before still warms their hands by the same fire. The eldest among them speaks of oaths taken long ago, of voyages made when the world seemed endless, of the way men once steered by stars and women kept the memory of their names through the long dark. The young listen and feel the weight of belonging settle upon them like a cloak, heavy, familiar, and warm. Outside, the wind shifts again, pushing clouds across the moon, and the snow begins to fall, soft and slow, gathering on roots and branches. The sea answers with its distant murmur, an endless conversation between water and wind. The people of the village know this sound as well as their own heartbeat. It is the voice of continuity, of something greater than them yet woven through their lives. When storms come, they endure together, sealing shutters, tying down boats, sharing what they have. When spring returns, they walk to the shore again, scanning the horizon for the sails that left months before. Some ships return, their hulls heavy with fish, wood, or amber from far lands. Others never reappear, their names becoming part of the stories told by the fire. In every tale, the sea is both giver and judge, unpredictable, vast, but never cruel without cause. The people accept this truth as they accept the coming of winter. It is not a thing to be feared, only respected. As night deepens, the village settles into stillness. The children sleep beneath thick furs, their dreams filled with the rhythm of waves and the murmur of voices from the thing. The elders sit a while longer, staring into the fire as if seeing through time. One by one, the flames fade to embers, glowing like the eyes of something ancient and patient. Outside, snow continues to fall, erasing footprints, softening edges, and binding the world in quiet. In this land of long winters and lingering light, life endures through memory and motion, through stories told in measured words, through hands that build and mend, through promises kept like stone. The sea waits beyond, vast and eternal, yet within each home burns a smaller, steadier light, a reflection of all that cannot be taken by distance or time. And when morning comes, grey and cold, the wind will move again through the trees, the village will breathe once more, and the people will rise as they always have, to live within the rhythm that binds fire to sea, silence to speech, and each fleeting life to the endless circle of return. Through these retellings, life becomes a circle, a quiet rhythm that turns without haste, without end. The stories told by the fire are not merely words, but living threads that bind one generation to the next, each voice carrying the weight and warmth of those who came before. Children listen, eyes wide in the glow of the flame, their faces soft with wonder and reflection. In time, they grow, their hands learning the same gestures. To mend nets, to carve wood, to tend the fire so that it does not die before dawn. They become parents, their voices slower, their memories deeper, and they tell the same tales to new faces gathered close against the winter's breath. Nothing is written, yet nothing is forgotten, for memory here does not need ink. It is carried in tone, in rhythm, in silence. The words drift through time like smoke, changing shape but never meaning. The warmth of the hearth becomes the archive of all that matters. Not kings or battles or laws, but endurance, kindness, patience, the slow and steady art of living. Every ember that glows is a reminder of hands that once fed the same flame, every shadow on the wall a trace of those who sat before and listened. The world outside may change, ice may melt, storms may rise, seas may claim the shore. But within this small circle of warmth, time folds back upon itself like waves meeting the sand. The children who once sat in wonder now sit in reflection, their voices carrying the same stories with small variations, a new word here, a pause there, yet the heart remains the same. To live here is to understand that nothing truly passes, it only changes form. The dead are not gone, only quieter, their lessons breathed into the rhythm of daily life. To fetch water, to stitch a tear, to guide a boat through fog. All these are echoes of what was once taught by the fire. The people move through their days as though in conversation with time itself, answering its questions not with speech, but with the steady continuation of what was begun long ago. Outside, the world moves in its great, slow patterns. The ice cracks on the river in spring, the snow whispers across the fields in winter, the gulls cry over the grey waves. Each sound folds into the larger silence, becoming part of the same long breath that the world exhales and inhales through the turning of seasons. Even the smallest noises, the snap of a twig underfoot, the shift of a log in the fire, the murmur of a lullaby, belong to that same ancient rhythm. The people know this not as belief, but as instinct. They do not speak of eternity, yet they live within it, carried by the endless exchange between warmth and cold, light and shadow. The fire burns, the fire fades, the fire is lit again. Children are born, the old pass on, the story continues. No one marks these moments with ceremony. The meaning is in the repetition itself, in the constancy that sustains even as everything changes. At the heart of each home, the hearth glows, not only as heat, but as memory made visible. Its light flickers upon wooden beams darkened by smoke, upon faces lined with time, upon tools shaped by use. It is the same fire that burned when the ancestors spoke of the first voyage across the sea, the same warmth that greeted the lost when they returned, the same light that saw joy and grief alike. It holds the world together in its small, steady pulse. The air inside the house hums with life, not loud, not hurried, but patient. The youngest child hums along with the old song being told, unaware that the tune is centuries old. The mother stirs the pot in rhythm with the storyteller's voice. The father listens without speaking, his gaze fixed on the flames as though reading what cannot be seen. Beyond the walls, the wind presses softly, listening, carrying the sound of their living into the night. The sea, unseen but always near, answers with its own slow music, the pulse of the tide rising and falling like breath. Through these small acts, the world becomes whole again. To live here is to belong, not to the land or the lineage alone, but to the sound of the world itself. Every crack of ice as the river begins to thaw, every whisper of snow sliding from the roof, every sigh of the wind moving through pine needles carries meaning. The people do not separate these things from their own existence. They hear them as part of themselves, as the body hears its own heartbeat. They do not rush to name or capture these sounds, for naming would make them smaller. Instead, they listen, and in listening, they remember that they too are temporary but essential, as fleeting as firelight and as necessary as air. When the flame burns low and the last log settles into ember, someone will stir it, feed it, keep it alive, not because they fear darkness, but because they honor what the light represents, the unbroken thread between breath and silence, between story and listener, between all that was and all that will be. The night deepens, the stars wheel slowly overhead, and the fire continues its quiet conversation with time. In the distance, a wolf calls, and its echo rolls through the frozen hills, soft and mournful, folding back into stillness. The people within their homes feel no fear, only recognition, for even that wild voice belongs to the same great rhythm. And so they rest, the warmth upon their faces, the memory of stories in their minds, their hearts beating in time with the world's long breath, the one that began before them, that will continue long after, unbroken, endless, and kind. The Fire over Osaka, Japan, 1615. Across the sea, the wide plains of Japan stretch beneath a sky so clear it seems made of glass, the air crisp with the first cold breath of winter. At the center of that vastness rises Osaka Castle, its walls white as snow, its towers gleaming like polished bone against the pale horizon. The fortress stands broad and calm, its stones set by hands that believed in permanence, in order, in the quiet strength of discipline. Within its high gates, the retainers of a fallen house move through the courtyards in silence. Their steps are measured, their voices low, their faces composed, though their hearts tremble beneath the weight of fate. They wear their armor not as pride, but as memory, a second skin of iron and duty. The corridors echo with small sounds, the scrape of sandals on wood, the faint click of sword fittings adjusted, the distant whisper of wind against banners that hang unmoving in the cold. Outside the city, an army gathers, patient, disciplined, vast. The fields are covered in a sea of tents that stretch toward the horizon, each marked by the same pale smoke that curls upward from cooking fires. Men move among them with quiet efficiency, their armor dull with use, their banners fluttering softly in the wind. Drums sound from time to time, not in fury, but in rhythm. A slow, deliberate heartbeat that carries across the plains and fades into the air. It is the final campaign of an age, the last movement of warriors who once believed the sword would never sleep, who had lived their lives within the narrow path between honor and death. Now they wait, each side watching the other across the winter fields, their patience as sharp as their blades. As the snow begins to fall, the world loses its edges. The ground turns white, the air fills with mist, and the castle and the encampment become two islands in a sea of silence. Through the long months of cold, the rhythm of life within the walls becomes one of waiting. The retainers rise before dawn to sweep the snow from the courtyards, to polish the fittings of armor that may never be worn again. The smell of oil and iron fills the air, mingling with the faint sweetness of rice steaming in the kitchens. Women patch garments and tend to the wounded. Children are hushed when they ask questions about the world beyond the gates. In the evenings, when the light fades to grey, candles are lit in narrow rooms, and the men gather quietly, their shadows tall and wavering upon the paper walls. They speak not of victory, but of endurance, of the weather, of old comrades now gone, of the meaning of loyalty when defeat has already arrived. Some still sharpen their blades each night, though they know there may be no need to draw them. The act itself becomes prayer, a way of remembering who they are. Outside the fortress, the enemy does not advance. The generals wait, studying the walls, counting the fires that burn within. The siege is not of violence but of time. The snow thickens, burying the trenches, muffling the sound of movement. Horses stand with their heads bowed, steam rising from their nostrils, their breath joining the low fog that hovers above the ground. In the distance, a cannon fires, a deep, rolling sound that echoes across the hills like thunder. The shot lands far from the walls, sending up a plume of smoke and earth. Within Osaka, the sound is heard as a dull vibration through stone and floorboards, a reminder that the world beyond still moves. The people pause, listen, then return to their work. Rice continues to cook, armor continues to shine, life continues, though each day feels more fragile than the last. As the days shorten, the snow becomes part of everything. It gathers along the rooftops, weighs down the branches of pines, softens the sharp edges of the walls. The sky remains pale and indifferent. In the castle's great hall, the banners of the fallen clan hang unmoving, their colors faded but still rich with meaning. Beneath them, the leader of the household sits in silence, his robes simple, his face expressionless. He knows that the end approaches, though he does not say it aloud. His attendants kneel beside him, waiting for commands that never come. Outside, the wind carries the faint ring of a distant bell from the city temples, a sound both mournful and serene. Within the kitchens, the last stores of grain are measured with care. The servants move quietly, their hands precise, as if control in small things could preserve order in the face of collapse. They speak little, but their gestures are filled with purpose. The warmth of the fires becomes precious, the sound of a pot lid lifting almost comforting. Each act, no matter how small, becomes a ritual of endurance. When the nights grow longer, the stars seem sharper, colder. The men sleep. In their armor, their swords within reach, they dream not of battle, but of the fields of home, of the sound of water running through spring channels, of the laughter of their children before the war began. Some wake before dawn and stand on the battlements, watching the horizon turn from black to grey. From there, they can see the enemy's fires glowing faintly across the plains, a mirror of their own. The two armies, divided by allegiance, are joined in the same stillness, the same waiting. Both sides know the shape of the end. Both endure it with the quiet dignity that the old ways demand. When morning comes, the snow glitters like steel, and the air feels sharp enough to cut. Within Osaka Castle, the first sound of the day is the creak of wooden doors opening to the cold. Servants carry buckets of water that freeze before reaching their destination. The retainers bow to one another as they pass, their expressions calm, almost serene. The sound of cannon fire returns from time to time, always distant, always followed by silence. And through it all, life continues in its slow, deliberate rhythm, the rhythm of duty without expectation, of courage without hope, of beauty found in endurance. The fire in the kitchens burns low but steady. The snow outside deepens, and the air carries the faint scent of pine. The world holds its breath, waiting for the final act of a story already written in silence. When the spring thaw arrives, the frozen rivers begin to stir, and the sound of dripping water echoes through the courtyards like a slow awakening. The snow recedes from the fields, revealing the black earth beneath, damp and waiting. For the first time in months, the air carries the faint scent of grass. Within Osaka Castle, word spreads quietly that an agreement has been made. The war will end, the outer walls will be taken down, and peace, or something resembling it, will return. The announcement brings no cheer, only stillness. The men bow their heads, the women continue their work. The soldiers polish their swords one last time, though they know they will not be used again. Soon workmen arrive, their hammers ringing against stone. The sound carries across the plains like a slow heartbeat. Dust rises into the air, pale against the light. Blocks of the Great Wall fall one by one, striking the ground with deep, final echoes. Each stone removed feels like a breath leaving the body. The fortress that had once stood as a symbol of strength becomes a hollow shell, its defenses undone not by battle but by agreement. The soldiers rest, their armor stacked neatly in rows, their hands idle for the first time in years. They sit in the shade of the courtyard trees, listening to the thud of falling stones, to the calls of crows circling above. Yet even in this calm, unease lingers. The air feels fragile, as if peace itself were a thing that could break with a single wrong word. The memory of waiting, of endurance, has sunk too deep to vanish so easily. At night, when the work stops, the castle hums with quiet, a kind of breathing in the dark. Some believe the walls remember, that the stones themselves grieve for what they once held. Outside, the fields begin to green, and the wind carries the smell of wet soil and smoke. The season changes swiftly. Summer comes early that year. The heat thickens the air until it feels heavy upon the skin. The rivers run high, glinting like molten glass under the sun, and the cicadas begin to sing their endless, shrill song, a sound that rises and falls like a fever. The soldiers wipe sweat from their faces, their armor now too hot to wear. The villagers move slowly through the fields, their straw hats wide, their backs bent beneath the weight of the harvest that still must come. But beyond the calm appearance of the land, tension coils like a drawn bow. The peace that was promised feels thin, uncertain, stretched too far. Rumors drift like smoke through the camps that the truce will not hold, that one side prepares again for war. No one speaks openly, but everyone listens. The days grow longer, the nights restless. Then, in the wide plain of Tanoji, where the grass bends low beneath the wind, the two forces meet once more. The morning begins in stillness, the horizon shimmering with heat. Then the sound of movement begins. First a low rustle, then the rhythm of many feet striking the earth. The plain fills with the breath of men and horses, with the creak of armor, the ring of steel being drawn from its sheath. Banners unfold in the air, their colors blurred by sunlight, red and gold and black, fluttering like the wings of vast birds. The commanders do not shout. They raise their hands and the lines begin to move. The first clash comes like a sigh, the dull meeting of shield and blade, followed by the deep, rolling sound of hundreds more. Dust rises thick and golden, swallowing the horizon. The air fills with the smell of sweat and metal, of soil turned by the weight of men. Arrows whistle through the sky like insects. The rhythm of drums returns, not the calm, measured beats of winter, but the rapid, breathless pounding of the end. Through the afternoon, the sound of battle rolls across the plain. The sun burns high above, unbothered by the struggle below. The shouts of orders blur into the wind, the clang of iron becomes a kind of music. Each side presses forward, then breaks, then returns, as if bound by the tide. By late day, the sky begins to shift, the light turning from gold to ash. The field is a haze of dust and smoke, the air trembling with heat. The men fight not for victory now, but for meaning, to hold one last moment of purpose before it slips away. Some stand among the fallen, their armor dented, their breath ragged, their eyes reflecting the faint glow that begins to rise behind them. For beyond the plain, the castle burns. The fire starts in the lower quarters, where the wood is dry from spring winds and spreads upward, unstoppable. Flames climb the towers like red silk unfurling against the darkening sky. The heat bends the air and ash falls like slow snow upon the city. By dusk, the great keep of Osaka is engulfed. The sound of its collapse carries for miles, a roar that mingles with the distant cries of battle. The sea, calm and wide, catches the reflection of the flames, turning its surface into a vast mirror of orange light. Fishermen along the coast pause in their boats, watching the glow spread across the horizon. To them, it looks as though the sun has risen again in the wrong direction. The smoke rises in pillars, drifting eastward, blotting out the stars. In the fields, the fighting slows, then ceases. The survivors stand where they are, silent, their faces lit by the same red light that marks both loss and conclusion. The wind shifts, carrying the smell of burning wood and lacquer, of oil and paper, of endings. The castle that had been built to endure the ages now dissolves into air, its strength returning to the elements from which it came. The warriors who once swore oaths beneath its walls lower their heads. Some kneel, pressing their palms to the earth. Others simply watch, unable to look away. The flames reach higher, their reflection stretching across the plains, across the sea itself. Night falls slowly, but the light does not fade. It burns on, steady and immense, until the smoke swallows it. And when morning comes, the sky above Osaka is pale and hollow, the city quiet once more, the ashes of the castle carried gently by the same wind that once stirred its banners, whispering through the fields where the final footsteps of the old world have already been erased. When the smoke clears, the land lies still, and the silence that follows feels heavier than the noise of war. The plains that once trembled beneath the march of soldiers are now quiet fields again, scattered with the remnants of battle. The darkened soil, the broken spears half buried in the mud, the smell of ash that clings to the air long after the flames have gone. The rivers run clouded for a time, carrying silt and memory toward the sea, and then they too clear, flowing again as if nothing had ever happened. The castle is gone, reduced to a blackened foundation and scattered stones, yet even in ruin it holds a strange dignity, the calm acceptance of something that has completed its purpose. The wind passes over it, gentle, untroubled, and in that motion the world begins to heal. The years that follow bring no more battles. The men who once carried swords now carry tools. The sound of hammer and saw replaces the clash of steel. Armor is stored away in chests, its metal polished one last time before being wrapped in cloth and sealed with care. The swords are cleaned, oiled, and laid to rest within their scabbards, not as trophies, but as guardians of a past that must no longer rule the present. The great houses, humbled by loss and decree, send their sons to live under the watch of the shogunate. They learn new arts, poetry, ceremony, governance, and the discipline of the warrior becomes the discipline of restraint. Towns rise where camps once stood, built from wood and willpower. Roads stretch like quiet veins through the countryside, connecting coast to mountain, village to city. Markets bloom along their edges, filled with the scent of rice, tea, and salt. The people trade not for conquest, but for survival, for comfort, for the slow rhythm of peace. The hum of daily life grows steady, the calls of merchants at dawn, the clatter of cartwheels on stone, the laughter of children who have never seen war. Across the land, the sword becomes a symbol rather than a weapon, worn at the hip, not for blood, but for memory. The warriors who remain learn to walk with lowered eyes, to bow with calm precision, to hold silence as tightly as they once held their blades. Their oaths are no longer to battle, but to balance, to serve, to endure, to keep the world still. The peace is not soft, it is shaped by discipline, as sharp and exact as a blade's edge. Villages expand into towns, towns into cities. Rivers are bridged, gardens built, temples restored. The sound of construction replaces destruction, but beneath it an unspoken awareness remains that all this calm was born from the exhaustion of violence. For more than 2 centuries, the land remains unshaken. Seasons turn with quiet predictability. The cherry blossoms fall, the rains come, the harvest rises golden in the fields. Children grow without learning the sound of cannon fire. The farmers bow to the same sun their ancestors once prayed to for victory, and the sea which once mirrored flames now reflects only sails and clouds. Yet even in this long peace, the memory of war does not vanish. It lingers beneath the surface like an ember kept beneath ash, dim but alive. It glows in the stories told by the old, in the careful rituals of the tea ceremony where movement replaces command, in the art of swordsmanship, still practiced though never used. The edge of the blade remains invisible but present, its purpose transformed. In the still air of evening, when the wind dies and the world seems to pause, the faint scent of steel can still be imagined. Cold, pure, unyielding, the people have learned to live within that memory, not to fear it, but to honor it, to let it remind them that peace, too, requires vigilance. Across the land, the samurai become poets, calligraphers, teachers. The fire that once roared within them is not extinguished but redirected, turned inward toward mastery of the self. The same patience that once guided the sword now guides the brush. The same focus that once faced death now tends to gardens and ink. The code of the warrior becomes the foundation of culture, its silence filling the space where orders and cries once lived. The world moves more slowly, as though afraid to disturb the delicate balance that has been achieved. In the great cities, the shogun's rule becomes law, but it is a law carried more by tradition than by fear. The nights are filled not with the sound of armor, but of flutes, of rain on tile, of quiet conversation behind sliding doors. Lanterns glow along the canals, their reflections trembling in the water like soft memories of light. The people walk with measured steps, and even the laughter in the tea houses carries restraint, as if joy, too, has learned the shape of order. Still in the mountains and the hidden valleys, the ruins of old fortresses remain. Moss covers their stones, trees root in their walls. Travelers sometimes pause there, feeling the air grow heavier, listening to the silence that seems deeper than elsewhere. The past breathes softly in those places, a reminder that beneath every peace lies the echo of conflict, that stillness itself is the final form of struggle. When the moon rises over the plains where Osaka once stood, the wind moves faintly through the grass, and those who listen closely might hear what sounds like the distant ring of a sword being drawn, not in violence, but in remembrance. The world holds its breath for a moment, then exhales, calm again. And in that breath, the ember glows once more, unseen but enduring, the quiet heart of a nation that learned how to burn without flame, how to fight without war, and how to remember without speaking. The city of a single man, Babylon 331 BCE. Far back in time, beneath the heavy sun of a vast and ancient plain, the walls of Babylon rise in color and light. The city glows like a vision carved from dust and fire, its towers catching the sun, its gates gleaming with the shimmer of glazed brick. Blue stretches across the walls like the surface of a calm sea, and lions stride proudly along the Ishtar Gate, their golden forms outlined in shadow and light. Beyond them, wide streets lead inward toward the heart of empire. To gardens, to temples, to the quiet breath of the Euphrates, flowing through stone channels that have carried water for generations. Into this city rides a young conqueror named Alexander. His armor glints beneath the burning sky, dulled by dust gathered from 1,000 miles of road. Behind him trail the remnants of a great march. Soldiers weary but upright, horses stepping slow, banners faintly torn by the wind. The air hums with the weight of arrival, with the long exhale of victory that brings no celebration. The people of Babylon watch from shaded doorways and temple stairs. They do not cry out, nor do they resist. The conqueror has come not as an invader, but as one who carries the inevitability of change. The gates stand open, and no blood darkens the streets. Only the soft shuffle of sandals, the muted rustle of banners, the low beat of distant drums mark his passing. The sound is not triumph, but transition, the turning of one age into another. Alexander dismounts at the city's center. The air smells of date palms and dust, of old incense burned in the temples of gods older than memory. The walls of the palaces shine faintly in the late light, their stones cool and smooth to the touch. He looks up, and for a moment he sees not conquest but continuity, the pulse of a civilization that has endured every hand that sought to hold it. The people bow, but their eyes are steady. They have seen empires rise and fall like tides. They know the shape of power and the silence that follows it. In the days that follow, the young ruler walks through the hanging gardens that rise in terraces above the city. Water runs through hidden channels, cascading between stones and feeding vines that twist around columns of carved stone. The air is thick with the scent of myrrh, jasmine, and damp earth. Birds move through the leaves, their wings flashing gold in the sun. Alexander pauses to watch the light fall on the water's surface. He speaks softly to those beside him, generals, scholars, scribes, of roads that will bind the world together, of rivers bridged, of caravans crossing deserts without fear. He speaks of cities connected by trade, of knowledge carried across frontiers, of a world where difference will no longer divide. His words fall like seeds, small and luminous, carried by the wind through the courtyards. Around him, the air carries a sense of calm ambition, a vision born not of conquest but of connection. At night, torches flicker along the walls and the city hums with the quiet work of continuation. Traders unpack their wares, scribes record the names of new rulers in cuneiform beside the old, priests light lamps before statues that have seen 100 kings come and go. In the palace, the conqueror studies maps drawn on parchment and clay, tracing the rivers of India, the mountains of Persia, the unknown lands beyond the horizon. His fingers move gently over their lines, not as a soldier marking targets, but as a dreamer tracing the outline of a promise. He does not yet know that his journey will end before his vision does, that the roads he imagines will be built by others, that his empire will scatter like dust in the same winds that carried him here. But for now in Babylon, the dream holds. The nights are long and warm. The air carries the hum of insects and the far-off rhythm of drums. The Euphrates reflects the stars, each one trembling like a memory of fire. Within his chambers, Alexander sits by the window, looking out at the city that glows like a living thing. The walls, once symbols of division, seem to him now like bridges, each stone a step towards something larger, something enduring. He speaks to his companions of learning and exchange, of temples shared between gods, of languages taught without conquest. They listen, unsure if such peace can exist, but his voice is steady, filled with the certainty of youth and vision. The people of Babylon, meanwhile, go on with their lives. They fill the markets, sweep the courtyards, tend the gardens. They speak in the same tones, sell the same fruits, bake the same bread. To them, empire is a pattern that changes its color, but not its weave. The faces of rulers fade, but the rhythm of the city remains. The conqueror's banners flutter above the gates now, but beneath them the same winds move, carrying the scent of the river, the sound of children laughing, the murmur of prayers whispered to gods that have never left. And so, in this moment of fragile peace, Babylon becomes something more than a conquered city. It becomes a mirror of ambition, of endurance, of the eternal balance between destruction and creation. The lions on the walls still walk forward, their bodies frozen in perpetual motion. The sky burns with the same ancient light. The river flows on, indifferent to names. And as Alexander walks once more through the gardens at dusk, the last sunlight catching the edge of his armor, it is said that he stops beside a fountain and listens, not to the noise of empire, but to the quiet voice of the water, steady, eternal, carrying forward the memory of all that has come before and all that will return again. Time moves, and with it the man changes, as all men must beneath the slow, unbroken weight of years. The soldier who once slept beneath the stars, whose hands bore the dust of 100 roads, now sits upon a high throne draped in silk. The air around him smells not of sweat and iron, but of incense and myrrh, of wealth earned by conquest and softened by luxury. The boy who once laughed with his soldiers at campfires now speaks with the measured calm of a ruler. His words, once sharp and filled with fire, have grown softer, slower, each syllable weighed before leaving his lips. The energy that once drove him across deserts and through mountains has turned inward, coiled like a sleeping serpent beneath the silk of his robes. Those who once called him companion now kneel before him, their eyes lowered, their voices careful. In the great hall of Babylon, light spills through high windows, striking polished stone floors that reflect it like water. Servants move in silence, their steps absorbed by woven rugs. Feasts are prepared each night, long tables heavy with dishes from every corner of the world, figs and olives from the west, spices from the east, dates dipped in honey, bread warm from the oven. Wine flows dark and thick into bronze cups, and the air hums with the sound of stringed instruments and low singing. Musicians pluck the same chords over and over, their melody winding through the air like smoke. The conqueror listens, sometimes smiling, sometimes lost in thought. His eyes are distant, fixed on something far beyond the walls, perhaps on the roads he once traveled or the faces that once marched beside him. Within Babylon the days stretch long, their rhythm unchanging. Mornings begin with reports and offerings, afternoons with audiences and decrees, evenings with feasts that blur one into the next. The city outside remains alive, merchants shouting, children playing, river barges gliding slowly through the channels. But within the palace, time feels suspended, heavy and endless. The courtyards bloom with jasmine, the fountains run cool and clear, and yet there is an undercurrent of weariness in the air, a quiet knowledge that greatness, once achieved, has nowhere left to go. Beyond the walls, the rivers continue their patient flow, indifferent to the rise and fall of kings. The Euphrates glides past the gardens, carrying with it reflections of the palace lights that flicker and break upon its surface. Fishermen cast their nets by torchlight, their laughter faint and human against the immensity of the night. The stars above are the same ones under which he once slept as a young man, but now they seem farther away, their light dimmed by distance and time. He remembers their brightness on the plains of Asia, the crisp air of the mountains, the smell of pine and horse sweat, the rough voices of his men. Now, all those sounds are gone. The halls echo instead with the low murmur of servants, the clink of metal on stone, the sigh of curtains moving in the warm wind. And then, as seasons turn, the harmony that held his world together begins to fade. It happens slowly, as such things do, a disagreement here, a whisper there, a moment of doubt that grows into something larger. A friend is lost, one who had once shared the same tent, who had fought beside him when victory seemed impossible. The loss is quiet, private, unmarked by trumpet or cry, but it leaves a hollow in the heart of the man who once believed himself beyond loneliness. Another follows soon after. Another voice silenced, another hand gone from the circle that had once surrounded him. The laughter that once filled the evenings grows rare, replaced by careful silence. Those who remain speak in formal tones, their affection measured by caution. The young conqueror, now a man of legend, begins to feel the distance between himself and the world he made. The banquet tables seem longer, the nights colder, even under the heavy heat of Babylon. He walks the gardens at dusk where the palms bend gently in the wind and listens to the sound of water moving between stones. The same water that once refreshed him after battle now seems to whisper of something he cannot name. He watches the servants light the lamps along the pathways, their flames trembling against the dark, and feels the slow ache of isolation settle upon him like a weight. The empire stretches far beyond what he can see, yet around him everything feels smaller. The rooms, the voices, the days. He drinks but does not taste. He listens but does not hear. The fire that once drove him forward has dimmed into embers, its heat replaced by a kind of quiet exhaustion. The man who wished to hold the world now finds himself holding only silence. He sits by the window at night, watching the stars, tremble over the black line of the river, and wonders when he last truly felt the air of freedom on his face. He remembers the sound of his horse's hooves striking the sand, the hum of his men's voices before battle, the first light of dawn spreading over a camp still half asleep. Those memories return like ghosts, flickering in and out of the lamplight. Around him, the empire he built continues to breathe. Armies stationed, cities governed, coins struck with his image. But the life within it has moved beyond him. The walls of Babylon hold his triumph, but they also hold his solitude. The man who once set out to bind the world together now drifts apart from it, surrounded not by enemies, but by the echo of his own success. Outside, the river flows on, endless and patient, carrying the reflection of the palace in ripples that never still. The stars look down as they always have, untouched, unjudging, bearing silent witness to the rise and fading of a single mortal flame beneath their eternal light. In the thick heat of the Babylonian summer, the air itself feels heavy, and the city moves more slowly, as though caught in a long breath that refuses to release. It is the year 323 BCE, and within the great palace, the same halls once built for kings who ruled before memory, a man lies still upon a bed of woven linen and carved cedar. Outside, the sunlight burns white upon the stone courtyards, and the hum of insects fills the air, restless and unending. Inside, the air smells faintly of oil, myrrh, and damp cloths laid across the fevered skin of the one who was once unstoppable. Alexander, the conqueror of worlds, lies quiet now, his strength stripped away not by blade or battle, but by the slow, invisible hand of illness. Around him, the walls that once echoed with his commands now hold only whispers. Physicians move carefully, their steps muffled against the floor, their faces pale beneath the lamplight. They speak in low tones, uncertain, each remedy failing as swiftly as it is tried. The generals stand at a distance, men who have crossed deserts and stormed fortresses at his side, now reduced to silence, unable to meet one another's eyes. His companions, the last who still call him by his name and not his title, take turns sitting near, watching the rise and fall of his breath, each movement weaker than the last. The fever burns through him like a slow fire, drying the lips that once spoke of empires, dulling the eyes that once looked beyond mountains and seas. His voice, when it comes, is a murmur, half a dream. He speaks of rivers, of ships, of roads unbuilt. He names lands not yet reached, cities not yet founded. Those who listen do not know if he speaks to them or to something beyond. He gestures faintly toward the window, where light filters through carved screens, casting shifting patterns across the walls. The world beyond continues as if unaware. The marketplace stirs with its usual rhythm. The barges drift along the Euphrates. The children chase each other through the narrow streets. And yet within these walls, time itself seems to pause. The conqueror breathes shallowly, his chest rising with effort, his hand trembling where it rests upon the sheet. The sound of water dripping from a basin marks the passing of minutes. The heat does not relent. Evening brings no relief, only a softer light. The air inside the palace grows close, the lamps dim, and the whispers fade to stillness. His companions gather one last time. One asks to whom the empire will pass, but no clear answer comes. His lips move, perhaps to speak, perhaps to pray, but the words are lost before they reach the air. His gaze remains fixed upon the ceiling, where the faint flicker of light from a single flame dances against the stone. Outside, a wind rises for a moment, stirring the curtains, carrying with it the scent of the river, a smell of life, of motion, of distance. And then it passes. When the last breath leaves him, it is so quiet that those nearby do not notice at first. The body does not tremble, the air does not change, yet something vast and unseen departs. For a heartbeat, even the murmur of the city seems to still. The attendants bow their heads, the generals lower their eyes. The silence that follows is not grief, but disbelief, the stillness of men who have followed too long to remember what it is to stand alone. No cry rises from the palace. The people outside do not yet know. The sun continues to burn above the plains, and the Euphrates glides onward, indifferent and eternal. As night falls, the city glows softly with lamplight. From the river banks, the palace looks serene, untouched by the storm that has passed through it. The servants move like shadows, closing doors, covering mirrors, lighting incense. In the courtyards, the fountains continue their endless murmuring, as if repeating the same quiet truth, that life continues even when greatness ends. The city does not weep. It simply grows stiller, as if the air itself is holding its breath. Somewhere, a musician plucks a single note and lets it fade. The moon rises pale over the white walls, turning the stone to silver. The heat lingers, pressing against the skin, heavy and full of memory. By dawn, word begins to spread. The conqueror is gone. The soldiers who once followed him stand in the courtyards, their faces drawn, unsure whether to bow or to kneel. There is no triumph, no lamentation, only the weight of realization. The empire that stretched from sea to mountain, from desert to jungle, will divide like glass, struck by a silent hammer. The generals, once bound by loyalty, will look at one another and see rivals. The dream of a single world will fracture into pieces, each carried away by a different wind. Yet, even as division begins, the memory of his passage remains. It lingers in the dust of the roads he marched, in the walls rebuilt where his armies slept, in the coins that bear his likeness, passed from hand to hand, long after his name has become legend. The people who once feared him will tell stories of him in quiet voices, their words blurring the man into myth. The soldiers who survive will speak of the night he crossed the desert, the morning he faced the impossible, the moment he looked upon them and smiled as if the world itself were theirs. These memories will fade, softened by time, but the echo of his presence will remain, not in conquest, but in silence. The name of Babylon endures, etched into clay and memory, not as the seat of his triumph, but as the place where motion met stillness, where the man who sought to unite all lands became one with the land itself. The river flows past the city as it always has, its current slow, unbroken, carrying silt and reflection toward the sea. The palace stands quiet, its courtyards empty, its stones cooling in the dawn. In the wind that drifts across the plains, there is the faintest scent of myrrh and dust, and in that air, if one listens long enough, one might still hear the whisper of footsteps fading down a road that leads beyond memory, the path of a life that burned across the world and was finally gathered back into silence. Closing, the slow breath of history. 4 places, 4 moments in time, each separated by distance and age, yet bound together by the same quiet pulse that moves through all living things. A village buried under snow, its roofs bowed beneath the weight of winter, smoke curling upward into the pale sky. A hearth glowing beneath the northern wind, where stories are told in voices softened by patience and the slow rhythm of flame. A castle surrounded by summer smoke, its walls trembling in the heat of battle and memory. And a city resting beneath a sun that never sets, where dust drifts across stone and the echo of ambition lingers like a scent that will not fade. Each world rises, glows and fades, yet something gentle remains, a rhythm that endures through centuries, work, endurance, memory, rest. The hands that once wove cloth or lifted swords or pressed seeds into soil have long since turned to dust, but their gestures remain carried forward in the breath of those who came after. Time does not erase them. It folds them quietly into the pattern of the earth. Beneath every stone, beneath every ruined gate or forgotten road, that rhythm still moves, slow, steady, unbroken. When night comes, the sounds of those lives still drift softly through the air. The crack of wood in a far hearth, the sigh of wind through empty fields, the slow step of a traveller crossing stone, the faint echo of a forgotten march fading into distance. These sounds do not belong to any one age, they belong to all of them, woven together like threads in a vast, invisible fabric. In every age, people have built, repaired, hoped, and waited. They have looked to the same stars, breathed the same air, felt the same ache of time pressing forward. History does not vanish, it settles. It does not shout, but hums beneath the surface of the present, beneath the hum of cities, beneath the murmur of machines, beneath the quiet of sleeping rooms. It waits in the curve of a potter's bowl, in the worn steps of an old threshold, in the lines of a song that no one remembers beginning. The world moves faster now, but the old rhythm remains below it, patient and unbroken. Every age leaves behind its trace, not just in stone or parchment, but in the silence between moments, in the way evening light falls across a wall, in the way the wind pauses before dawn. And if one listens closely past the noise and haste, one can hear it still, the long, slow breath of history, steady as the tide, deep as sleep. It moves through everything that was and everything that will be, the quiet pulse of continuity. The snow will melt, the fire will dim, the castle walls will crumble, the desert city will sink into dust, and yet the breath will remain soft and endless, passing from one life to another. The past does not end, it simply changes form, becoming the air we breathe, the soil beneath our feet, the silence that fills the space between words. And in that silence, the world remembers itself, not through the shouts of kings or the cries of war, but through the smallest sounds of endurance, a hand closing around a tool, a step across worn stone, the exhale of someone watching the last light fade from the sky. History rests, but it never sleeps. It breathes beneath us, around us, through us, carrying forward the echo of every age, the whisper of every life. And in the hush of night, when the world grows still again, we can feel it. That slow, quiet breath that has never stopped, the steady rhythm of all that was, all that remains, and all that will one day return to silence.